Once upon a time, in a large and bustling city, there lived a billionaire named Eric. He had everything a man could dream of: fancy cars, a mansion, and more money than he could ever spend. But despite all his wealth, Eric felt lonely. He knew people only saw his money and power, not his heart. Eric had been in many relationships, but none of the women truly loved him. They were all drawn to his wealth, not to the man he was inside. The more this happened, the emptier Eric felt. He wanted someone who would love him for who he really was, not because he could buy them expensive things. One day, Eric came up with an idea. He would leave behind his luxurious life and go undercover. He decided to pretend to be a crippled beggar. He thought that if he could meet someone who would care for him while he appeared poor and helpless, that person might truly love him. Eric told his parents about his plan, and they were very worried. His mother, a well-known businesswoman, and his father, a powerful politician, tried to talk him out of it. "Eric, you could be recognized. What if someone dangerous finds out who you are? You could be kidnapped or harmed," his father said, his voice filled with concern. "I'll be careful. I'm going far away to a place where no one knows me," Eric reassured them. He was determined to find real love, no matter the risks. His mind was made up. He left his mansion behind and traveled to a small village far from the city. There, he dressed in old, torn clothes and sat in a wheelchair. He rolled himself to a quiet street corner, hoping no one would recognize him. With his hand outstretched, he began to beg. "Please help me," he whispered, hoping someone would stop. He felt nervous and vulnerable. It was the first time in his life he had ever asked for anything from strangers. For days, Eric sat on the street, watching people pass by. Most didn't even look at him. Some gave him a quick glance before hurrying away. He had never felt so invisible in his life. But then, one day, a girl named Destiny came by. Destiny was different. She was young, probably in her early 20s, with kind eyes and a gentle spirit. She didn't have much herself, her family was poor, and her father, Roland, worked hard on their small farm to make ends meet. But despite her struggles, Destiny always found a way to smile. As Destiny walked past Eric's spot, she noticed him sitting in his wheelchair, looking tired and hungry. Her heart softened. She stopped and bent down, looking into his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Eric was taken by surprise. It had been days since anyone had spoken to him. "I'm just trying to get by," he said, trying to sound weak. Destiny looked into her small purse. She didn't have much money, but she couldn't walk away without helping him. "Here," she said, handing him a few coins. "I know it's not much, but it's all I have right now." Eric felt a lump in his throat. Her kindness touched him in a way that money never had. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me." Destiny smiled softly. "Do you have a place to stay?" she asked. Eric shook his head. "No," he said, feeling a little guilty for lying. Destiny thought for a moment. "I live with my father. Our house is small. I would have loved to help you, but I don't know if my father will agree to it." Destiny hurried home, her heart still heavy with concern for the beggar she had met. As she walked into the small house, she found her father, Roland, resting after a long day's work on their farm. His face, though worn from years of labor, still carried the warmth and kindness that she loved so much. "Father, I met someone in the village today," Destiny began, her voice hesitant. "A man, a beggar, sitting on the street in a wheelchair. He looked so tired and hungry." Roland's eyes softened as he listened. "What did you do, Destiny?" "I gave him some of the little money I had left, but he told me he has no place to stay," Destiny explained. "I wanted to help him, but I didn't know if it was the right thing to do. Should I have done more?" Roland sighed deeply, thinking about the man Destiny had described. "You can't leave him out there alone in the night," he finally said. "No one should be left to suffer when we have a roof over our heads. Go back and bring him here. We'll make room for him." Destiny smiled, grateful for her father's compassion. Without wasting any time, she grabbed her shawl and hurried back to the spot where she had left the man. When she returned, Eric was still sitting in his wheelchair, looking lost in thought. She approached him carefully, her soft voice cutting through the evening air. "My father said you can't stay out here alone tonight," she said gently. "Come with me. We'll give you a place to sleep." Eric blinked, surprised by the offer. He had never expected such kindness from strangers, and his heart swelled with emotion. I don't know what to say," he stammered. "You don't have to say anything," Destiny replied with a kind smile. "Just let us help you." With Destiny's assistance, Eric made his way back to her small, humble home. As he crossed the threshold, he couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth and safety that he hadn't felt in a long time. Destiny and her father had so little, yet they were willing to share what they had with a man they barely knew. As Eric settled into the modest room they had prepared for him, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found what he was looking for. But with his heart full of gratitude, he also felt a growing sense of guilt. He was living a lie, pretending to be something he was not. Eric spent his first night in Destiny and Roland's home, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. The room was small, but it was clean and welcoming. As he lay on the thin mattress, he listened to the sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves outside. For the first time in a long while, he felt safe. Destiny brought him a bowl of warm soup, and Eric savored each sip. She sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes filled with kindness. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. "We want to help you." "Thank you," Eric replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know how much this means to me." Over the next few days, Destiny and Roland took care of Eric. They helped him with his daily needs and even made a small garden for him to sit in. Eric enjoyed spending time with Destiny. She was funny and smart, and he found himself laughing more than he had in years. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Destiny looked at him with concern. "You seem sad sometimes," she said. "Is there something on your mind?" Eric wanted to share everything with her, but he held back. I'm grateful to be here," he replied, forcing a smile. "I've been through a lot." Destiny nodded, but Eric could see she wanted to know more. He felt a pang of guilt. How could he enjoy this happiness while hiding who he really was? Meanwhile, back in the city, Eric's parents were growing increasingly worried. They hadn't heard from him since he left, and it was unlike him to go without his phone. Every night, his mother sat by the window, praying for her son's safety. Her heart ached with worry. Where could he be? She wondered aloud, her voice thick with emotion. This is our only son. He should have told us where he was going. Eric's father tried to stay calm for his wife's sake, but he couldn't hide his concern. I'm sure he's fine, he said, though he felt a knot in his stomach. He's probably just taking a break from everything. You know how he is. But each passing day without news made them more anxious. Eric's mother would cry, praying that he was safe, wherever he was. One cool evening, Roland sat beside Eric in the small garden. He had been meaning to ask how Eric ended up in a wheelchair. Eric paused, his heart racing, and shared his story. He had been in an accident a few months ago. His car skidded off the road, and while he was lucky to survive, his legs were badly injured. Eric explained that the doctors had told him he could walk again, but he needed a surgery that was far too expensive for him. Roland felt deep sympathy. It was a terrible thing for a man to suffer through. Eric tried to mask his pain, but Roland could see it. He decided in his heart that he couldn't let Eric continue like this. They had to do something. The next morning, Roland pulled Destiny aside over breakfast. He spoke of Eric's condition and his need for surgery. They didn't have enough money, but Roland suggested they start small. They could sell some of their farm's produce, fruits, vegetables, maybe even some of the livestock. It wouldn't raise all the money at once, but it could be a start. Destiny admired her father's generosity and determination. They didn't have much, but Roland always believed in helping others. They decided to keep it a secret from Eric, fearing that he might refuse the help. Destiny began working harder on the farm, picking fruits and vegetables to sell at the village market. Roland took care of the farm's daily work, but both father and daughter focused on gathering enough produce to make a difference. At the market, Destiny began selling the fresh produce. People from the village appreciated the quality of the fruits and vegetables she offered. But one day, Judah, a wealthy young man from the city, approached her again. Judah had been trying to get her attention for months. Every time he came to the village, he offered her gifts and promises of a luxurious life if she would only marry him. Judah made his usual proposal, promising her wealth and comfort. He talked about how much better her life would be in the city. Destiny remained calm, declining his offer. She didn't want the life Judah was offering. Her life, though humble, gave her peace. Judah grew frustrated. He didn't understand why she would choose to remain in the village, selling vegetables, when she could have a mansion in the city. He called her a fool for wanting to live in poverty, a dirty village girl who didn't know better. Judah stormed away in anger. Destiny continued selling at the market, her heart heavy, but her mind clear. She had chosen her path, and she had no regrets. Back at home, Roland and Destiny kept up their efforts to raise money for Eric's surgery. Every coin they earned from selling vegetables went into a secret fund. But no matter how much they worked, it seemed like they could never save enough. Sophia, Destiny's best friend, came by her house one afternoon, her face serious, but with a hidden agenda. Judah had approached her earlier that day, handing her money to help convince Destiny to marry him. He was growing tired of her rejections, and he figured Destiny would listen to her best friend. Sophia, feeling important, took the money and agreed to help. After all, she thought, Judah was a good match for Destiny, rich, handsome, and ready to take her away from the village life. Sitting with Destiny, Sophia casually brought up the topic of Judah, reminding her of how many times he had come to the village just to ask for her hand. She emphasized the wealth and comfort that awaited her if she said yes. Destiny, calm as always, looked at her friend and simply shook her head. She had no interest in Judah, no matter how much he promised. Sophia pushed further, talking about how Destiny could live in the city, have beautiful clothes, and never have to work in the market again. But Destiny remained firm. She didn't want Judah. She then revealed something Sophia wasn't expecting. She thought she was starting to fall in love with Eric. Sophia froze, unable to believe what she had just heard. Destiny in love with Eric. That poor, crippled, ugly man who had nothing to his name. Sophia's shock quickly turned into anger. She couldn't believe her friend was choosing poverty, choosing a man who had nothing to offer. In her frustration, Sophia spoke her mind, calling Eric a poor, crippled man, mocking his appearance, and insisting that Destiny was making a huge mistake. She couldn't understand how Destiny could even think about loving someone like him when she had a chance with a man as wealthy as Judah. Destiny remained calm through Sophia's harsh words. Her mind was made up. She told Sophia to stop coming to her house if all she wanted to talk about was Judah. Their friendship meant a lot to her, but if Sophia continued pushing her towards Judah, Destiny was ready to end it. Sophia, filled with anger and disbelief, stormed out of the house. After leaving Destiny's place, Sophia went straight to Judah and told him everything. She recounted Destiny's words, her refusal to consider Judah, and most of all, the shocking revelation that Destiny was starting to fall in love with Eric. Judah was livid. How could she fall for a man like Eric, a beggar, a cripple, when he, Judah, was offering her everything? His anger boiled inside him, and the thought of Destiny choosing Eric over him was unbearable. But as Judah fumed, Sophia's emotions shifted. She, too, was angry at Judah. She had always been by his side, always helped him, and yet he never looked her way. Why was he so obsessed with Destiny? Sophia had everything Judah could want. She was beautiful, her family was rich, and she carried herself with class and style. What more could a man ask for? Sophia, frustrated and heartbroken, confronted Judah right then and there. She asked him why he was wasting his time chasing Destiny when she was right in front of him. She reminded him of her beauty, her wealth, and her social status. She offered herself as the woman who could give him everything he wanted. But Judah didn't even flinch. His heart was set on destiny. To him, destiny was everything Sophia wasn't: humble, homely, well-mannered, and grounded. Judah valued the simplicity and quiet strength destiny carried, things that Sophia lacked. Hearing Judah praise destiny, Sophia's jealousy grew into hatred. She despised the way men, especially Judah, were always attracted to destiny. No matter how hard she tried, she could never draw the same attention. And now, with Judah rejecting her for a poor girl like Destiny, her envy turned into something darker. From that moment on, Sophia carried a deep resentment for Destiny, a resentment that would only grow with time. As Sophia walked away from Judah, her mind was racing with thoughts of how to tear Destiny down. Judah's rejection had stung, but what hurt more was that Destiny, the girl who had nothing, seemed to have all the love and admiration that Sophia craved. As the days passed, Destiny and Roland worked tirelessly, selling fruits and vegetables in the village market. But no matter how hard they tried, the money they raised was nowhere near enough for Eric's surgery. Roland knew he couldn't let this go on. Eric's condition weighed heavily on his heart, and he had grown to care deeply for the young man. He couldn't stand by and watch Eric's hope for recovery slip away, knowing that surgery was his only chance to walk again. One evening, after a long day at the farm, Roland made a decision. He had 2 pieces of land, the only valuable things he owned. His ancestors had passed them down to him, and they were his family's last connection to their heritage. But Roland was a man of great compassion, and Eric's suffering was too much for him to bear. That night, he decided to sell one of the lands to raise enough money for Eric's surgery. The following day, Roland quietly sold the land. His heart ached, knowing what he was giving up, but he couldn't let that stop him. This was Eric's chance to be free from the wheelchair, and it was a sacrifice he was willing to make. Roland returned home with the money in hand, eager to share the news with Eric. When he arrived, he found Eric sitting quietly in the small living room, gazing out the window. The evening sun cast a soft light through the open door. With a smile, Roland told Eric that the money for his surgery was ready, that he had sold his land to make it possible. Eric's face went pale. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. This poor man, who barely had enough to provide for his family, had sold his land, his only source of wealth, for his sake. Guilt hit Eric like a wave, and he couldn't stay silent any longer. He had already taken too much from this family, and now they were sacrificing everything for him. Eric swallowed hard, his voice shaking as he began to confess. He told Roland the truth, that he wasn't really a beggar, that he wasn't poor. He explained how he was actually a wealthy man, a billionaire who had come to the village disguised as a cripple to find true love. He had wanted to escape the women who only loved him for his money. So he created this lie to see if someone would love him for who he truly was. Roland stood frozen, listening in disbelief as Eric revealed the full story. The air in the room felt heavy with the weight of Eric's words. After a long silence, Roland's face hardened. Without saying a word, he stormed out of the house, unable to process the betrayal. He walked to a quiet corner of the yard and sank to his knees. His heart broke as tears filled his eyes. This man, whom he had trusted, had been lying to them from the start. Roland had sold his land, his family's legacy, for a lie. He had believed in Eric's suffering, and now it felt like everything was crumbling around him. Destiny had been nearby and saw her father rush out of the house. She hurried inside to find Eric sitting there, his face filled with guilt. She demanded to know what had happened. Eric, already consumed by shame, confessed to her just as he had to her father. Destiny stood there, speechless at first, her emotions swirling. When the truth finally hit her, anger surged through her body. She looked at Eric with a mixture of disbelief and rage. All this time, she and her father had been working hard, sacrificing what little they had, all because they believed he was in desperate need. How could he have lied to them like this? How could he make them suffer, knowing they were giving everything for him? Tears welled up in her eyes as her anger took over. Without holding back, Destiny unleashed her frustration, her voice filled with hurt. She told Eric how cruel his deception had been, how much pain he had caused them. Her father had sold their land, their last hope for a better future, all for someone who had never needed their help in the first place. Destiny's heart felt shattered. She had begun to care for Eric, had started to see a future with him, but now all she saw was betrayal. Eric tried to explain. He pleaded with her to understand his intentions, telling her that he had never meant to hurt them. But Destiny couldn't listen. The weight of what had happened was too much for her to bear. She turned her back on him, tears streaming down her face, and walked away to her room. There, alone, she let her tears fall freely. She cried for her father, who had given everything, and for herself, for having believed in a man who had deceived them so deeply. The house was quiet that night, the air thick with pain and betrayal. Roland stayed outside, lost in his own grief, while Destiny cried herself to sleep. Eric, filled with regret, sat alone, unsure of how to fix the damage he had caused. Word of Eric's true identity spread through the village like wildfire. It didn't take long before everyone knew that the poor, crippled beggar was actually a billionaire. Whispers filled the air as neighbors gathered in corners to discuss the shocking news. The man they had pitied for months was not who they thought. Many were in disbelief, but soon the facts became clear, and no one could deny the truth. When the news reached Judah, it felt like the ground beneath him was shaking. He realized in an instant that his dreams of winning Destiny's heart were over. How could he compete with a billionaire? The woman he had spent so long chasing would never look his way now. He knew it was the end of the road for him, and his desperation grew. With no other options, Judah decided to visit Sophia. He arrived at her house, his pride bruised, but determined to salvage what he could. Standing before her, he told Sophia that he was ready to be with her, ready to start a relationship now that Destiny had rejected him. He hoped Sophia would take him back and forget the past, but Sophia's response wasn't what he expected. Sophia burst into loud laughter, her voice echoing through the room. She looked at Judah with a mix of amusement and disdain. "You must be out of your mind," she said, "to think I would ever marry someone like you." Judah stood there, stunned, his heart sinking. Sophia continued, her words sharp and cutting. "Do you really think I don't know the truth? You've been flaunting your boss's cars and clothes, pretending to be wealthy, but you have nothing. You're a fraud, Judah. You've been exposed, and I would never waste my time on someone like you." Judah's face drained of color. His secret, the one he had carefully guarded for so long, was out. Sophia had discovered not long ago that the fancy cars he drove and the expensive clothes he wore weren't his. He had been living a lie, pretending to be rich to impress Destiny, but now everything had come crashing down. Humiliated, Judah turned and walked away, his head hanging low in shame. He had lost everything: Destiny, his dignity, and now even Sophia's respect. The next morning, Eric gathered his courage and went to speak to Destiny. He had spent the night thinking about everything: his lies, the pain he had caused her and her father, and the future he still hoped to build with her. Eric knew he had made mistakes, but his feelings for Destiny were real. He found her outside the house, her face still marked by the pain of the past few days. Eric approached her slowly, his heart heavy with regret. He told Destiny that he was ready to take her back to the city with him, that he wanted to make things right. He spoke of a life they could share, away from the village, where she would never have to struggle again. Eric promised that he would take care of her and her father, that they would never want for anything. But Destiny's face remained hard, her eyes filled with sadness. She looked at Eric, not with anger this time, but with disappointment. She told him she couldn't go with him. The wounds from his deception were still too fresh, and she wasn't ready to leave everything behind. Eric tried to explain himself once more, to tell her how much he cared for her. But Destiny's mind was made up. Without another word, she turned and went to find her father. Together, Destiny and Roland gathered their tools and prepared to head to the farm. As they walked away, Eric stood there, watching them disappear down the path. His heart ached, knowing that his lies had cost him more than he ever imagined. He had come to the village searching for love, but now he was left with nothing but regret. At the farm, Destiny worked silently beside her father, her mind swirling with thoughts of Eric. She had cared for him deeply, had even started to imagine a life with him, but the betrayal was too much to bear. Her father, though quiet, shared her pain. He had trusted Eric, had sold his land for him, only to find out that the man he had opened his home to was living a lie. As Eric sat alone, thinking about what to do next, Sophia came to see him. She had heard about the problems between him and Destiny, and she saw this as a chance to get closer to him. She walked up to him, pretending to be concerned, but her real plan was to lie and twist the truth. Sophia told Eric that Destiny wasn't as good as she seemed. She said Destiny had been pretending to be a decent girl, but she wasn't. Sophia claimed Destiny was only playing him and wasn't truly interested in him. She went further, saying Destiny was flirting with other men in the village and didn't really care about Eric. Her words hit Eric hard, and he didn't know what to believe. Then, Sophia told Eric that she liked him. She said she had admired him from the start, even when he was begging on the street, pretending to be a cripple. She tried to make Eric believe that she was the one who really cared for him, not Destiny. Eric, who had been quietly listening, finally asked her a question. "If you liked me, why didn't you say something when I was pretending to be crippled? Why wait until now?" Sophia quickly replied, "I was waiting for the right time. I didn't want to get in the way while you were sorting things out with Destiny." Eric's face grew serious. He had heard enough. "Get out," he said firmly. "I know what you're doing, Sophia. You're just after my money. You're spoiled and selfish, nothing more than a gold digger." Sophia's face turned red with anger and shame. She hadn't expected Eric to reject her like this. She stormed out of the house, embarrassed and upset. As she left, she muttered curses under her breath, blaming Destiny for everything. Sophia thought, if it weren't for Destiny, I could have had Eric. Days passed, and Eric tried everything to convince Destiny and Roland to come with him to the city. He apologized over and over, explaining that he never meant to hurt them, but the damage was done. Destiny couldn't trust him anymore, and Roland felt betrayed. No matter what Eric said, they couldn't see him the same way. Eric felt sadder and more lost than ever. This family, who had shown him real kindness, didn't care about his money. They took him in, gave him food, and treated him like family when they thought he had nothing. It was the love he had always wanted, but now, because of his lies, he had ruined everything. One morning, Eric decided it was time to leave the village. He knew staying any longer would only cause more pain. He couldn't stand to see the hurt in Destiny's eyes or the disappointment in Roland's face. So, with a heavy heart, he packed his things and got ready to go back to the city. Before he left, Eric sat in the house one last time, remembering all the moments he had shared with Destiny and her father. The laughter, the warmth, and the hope that he could have had something real with them. It was hard for him to walk away from the only family that had ever truly loved him. As Eric walked down the road, leaving the house behind, he looked back one last time. His heart ached, knowing that this place had once felt like home. The love he had been searching for his whole life had been here, but he lost it because of his lies. With the sun setting in the distance, Eric kept walking, the village slowly fading behind him. His mind was full of regret. No amount of money could fill the emptiness he felt now. The love he had ruined was something money couldn't buy. As Eric walked away from Destiny's home, her heart shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she cried for hours. She had fallen in love with Eric despite everything, and now he was gone. Her mind was full of regret. She questioned why she had let him go, why she had allowed her anger to push him away. Though he had lied about his identity, she knew deep down that he had a good heart. She had seen the kindness in his eyes and felt the warmth in his presence. Now all of that was gone, and she couldn't help but feel that she had made a terrible mistake. Back in the city, Eric's mother was the first to see him as he arrived at their mansion. The moment she laid eyes on her son, she ran to him, her arms wide open. She hugged him tightly, tears of relief in her eyes. She had been so worried when he traveled to an unknown village. "Thank God you're back," she said, holding him close. "We were so scared. Where have you been?" Eric sighed deeply and sat down to explain everything. He told her about the village, how he had pretended to be a cripple to find true love, and how he had met Destiny and her father. He told her how kind they were, how they had taken care of him, and how he had fallen in love with Destiny. His mother listened quietly, her heart softening with every word. She felt pity for her son, understanding how much this family had meant to him. When Eric finished his story, his mother looked at him with sadness in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Eric. It sounds like they truly cared for you. But life can be cruel sometimes. Maybe it's for the best. You'll find love again, I'm sure." Just then, the front door opened and Eric's father entered. He was a tall, stern man, a successful businessman, and a politician who was well respected in the political world. His father had been focused on one thing for the past year: becoming the governor. He had connections, plans, and strategies to ensure his victory in the upcoming election. And for him, everything was falling into place, except one thing: Eric's marriage. Eric's father barely glanced at him before heading straight to his study. Eric followed him, knowing that he had to explain everything. When he reached his father's office, he stood by the door, waiting for his father to acknowledge him. "Father, I'm back," Eric said. His father nodded without looking up from his papers. "So you finally decided to return. Where have you been all this time?" Eric explained the entire situation again, hoping for some understanding. But as he spoke, his father's face remained cold and indifferent. When Eric finished, his father leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Good," his father said after a moment of silence. "I'm glad she rejected you." Eric was stunned. "What?" "I never supported this nonsense from the beginning," his father continued. "Going off to a village, pretending to be someone you're not, all to find true love. It was foolish." Eric's heart sank. He had hoped for at least a little sympathy from his father, but he should have known better. His father had never cared about love or emotions. For him, everything was about business and connections. "Listen to me, Eric," his father said, his tone sharp. "You are my only son, and I have a lot riding on you. I have already made plans for you to marry Chief Timothy's daughter. You know this. Chief Timothy is key to me winning the governorship election, and I won't let anything stand in the way of that. You must marry her, or I will not take it lightly with you." Eric's chest tightened with anger and frustration. "But I don't love her. I don't even know her." His father slammed his fist on the desk, causing the papers to scatter. "This is not about love. This is about power, about our family's future. Chief Timothy's daughter will secure my position as governor, and you will marry her whether you like it or not. Are you doing this because you are an only son? You think you can just make any decision you want?" Eric stood there, speechless. He had always known that his father was controlling, but this was too much. His father was willing to sacrifice his happiness just to secure his political future. "You have one job, Eric," his father continued, "and that is to marry Chief Timothy's daughter. I don't care about this girl from the village. Forget about her. She's nothing compared to what you could have." Without another word, Eric turned and left the room, his mind in turmoil. He knew he was facing a battle not only with his father, but with himself. Could he really go against his father's wishes and follow his heart? Or would he be trapped in a life he didn't want, just to please his father's ambitions? Eric couldn't take it anymore. The weight of his father's expectations and the pressure to marry a woman he didn't love were too much. One evening, he went to his mother and told her he was leaving for the village. He couldn't imagine his life without Destiny and her father, who had shown him kindness beyond anything he'd ever experienced. He explained to his mother that he wanted to be with them, to live a simple life, free from all the pressure of his father's political plans. His mother, worried, tried to convince him to stay. She told him how dangerous it was to defy his father, how their family's future was at stake. But Eric wasn't listening. His heart was set on Destiny. He couldn't imagine losing her again, and the thought of living his life with someone else made him sick. He packed his things quietly, and before his father returned home that night, Eric was already on his way back to the village. When Eric arrived at Destiny's home, she was surprised but overjoyed. Her heart leaped when she saw him standing at the door. She had missed him terribly and feared she'd never see him again. Tears welled up in her eyes as she welcomed him back into their simple home. That night, they sat together, talking about their future, about how much they had both suffered in his absence. Eric knew he had made the right choice. His heart felt lighter now that he was with the woman he loved. Meanwhile, back in the city, Eric's father came home and learned from his wife that their son had left. He was furious. He paced back and forth, yelling that he would send his men to the village the next day to drag Eric back, whether he liked it or not. His wife, seeing his anger, tried to calm him down. She knew how much Eric meant to both of them, and she also knew how stubborn her husband could be. That night, she sat him down and told him they needed to take a different approach. She suggested that instead of forcing Eric back, they allow him to bring Destiny and her father to the city. Once they were here, she could offer them a large sum of money to leave their son alone. Eric's father, still seething with anger, paused for a moment. His wife's plan made sense to him. After all, everyone had a price. He believed that once Destiny and her father saw the money, they would be eager to disappear and let Eric return to the life they had planned for him. Reluctantly, he agreed to let his wife handle the situation. She assured him that everything would be fine and that they would have their son back, focused on their family's future. Eric's father calmed down, convinced that money would solve everything. But in her heart, Eric's mother knew that things wouldn't be so simple. She had seen the love in her son's eyes when he spoke about Destiny. The next day, Eric's mother called him. She told him that he could bring Destiny and her father to the city. Eric couldn't contain his joy. He quickly told Destiny the good news, and she shared it with her father. Roland, who had never been to the city in his entire life, gladly agreed to go. He was excited about the chance to see a new world and grateful for all the help Eric's family was offering. When they arrived in the city, Eric's father sat Roland down. With a calm voice, he told him that he had bought them a house and also arranged a business for him so he wouldn't have to work on the farm anymore. Roland, overwhelmed with happiness, thanked Eric's father profusely. He never thought such kindness would come his way. With new hope in his heart, he and Destiny moved into their new home. However, one afternoon, things took a dark turn. Eric's father visited Destiny alone. With a cold expression, he told her that now that he had settled them with a house and a business, they must stay away from his son. He warned her that if she or her father didn't listen, they would disappear, and no one would dare ask what had happened. Fear gripped Destiny as she listened to the threatening words. She didn't know what to do. Shaking with fear, she called Eric and told him everything. Eric, furious, confronted his father immediately. He couldn't believe that after all the promises, his father would go behind his back like this. Without wasting time, Eric went straight to Chief Timothy's house. He looked the chief in the eye and told him that he would never marry his daughter, no matter what. To make his point stronger, he even lied, saying that his girlfriend, Destiny, was already pregnant with his child. This news hit the chief like a ton of bricks. His face turned red with anger. He couldn't believe that Eric had rejected his daughter so harshly. Chief Timothy stormed out of the house and went straight to Eric's father. Filled with rage, he told him that he would never support him in his run for governor. Without his influence, Eric's father's dreams of becoming a governor were shattered. Chief Timothy made it clear that he would have nothing more to do with the family and left angrily, leaving Eric's father in shock and disbelief. Eric's father was furious after his argument with Chief Timothy. Desperate to save his political career, he tried calling the chief several times, but every time, Chief Timothy refused to pick up his calls. Frustration boiled within him. His anger soon turned to his son, Eric. He warned Eric that if he lost the election, there would be consequences that Eric couldn't even imagine. Eric remained firm, knowing he had chosen love over his father's ruthless ambitions. The day of the election finally arrived. Eric's father anxiously waited for the results, but when the announcement came, it shattered all his hopes. He had lost, and the other political party had won the governorship seat. Without Chief Timothy's support, he stood no chance. The defeat filled him with rage. His dreams of power, wealth, and influence had crumbled, and he blamed Eric for it all. Blinded by anger, Eric's father made a horrible decision. He sent his men to Roland's house with orders to teach them a lesson. That night, they arrived at Roland's simple home and brutally attacked the poor man. They beat him so severely that he fainted, lying motionless on the floor when they finally left. It was a cruel act of revenge for something Roland had no control over. When Destiny returned from the market later that evening, she found her father lying on the floor, unconscious and barely breathing. Panic surged through her. She screamed for help and, with the help of some neighbors, rushed him to the hospital. Tears streamed down her face as they drove as fast as they could. At the hospital, the doctor took one look at Roland and quickly went to work. After what felt like hours, the doctor came out and told Destiny that if she hadn't brought him in when she did, her father wouldn't have survived. It was a miracle he was still alive. Eric rushed to the hospital as soon as he heard the news. When he saw Roland lying in the hospital bed, bruised and weak, his heart sank. This was the man who had welcomed him into his home, the man who had cared for him without knowing his true identity. Seeing Roland like this broke something inside Eric. He couldn't hold back his tears. He knew this was all his father's doing, and it filled him with guilt and sorrow. The only family that had ever shown him real love was suffering because of him. Destiny sat by her father's bedside, holding his hand, silently crying. Eric joined her, his heart heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. He knew he had to make things right, but at that moment, all he could do was sit with Destiny and pray that Roland would survive. When Eric got home after the emotional day at the hospital, he was filled with anger and pain. His heart pounded with every thought of Destiny's father lying in that hospital bed, barely hanging on to life. He couldn't take it anymore. His father's greed and cruelty had gone too far. In a fit of rage, Eric stormed into his room, opened his drawer, and pulled out a gun. His hands trembled with a mix of fury and determination. For the first time in his life, he felt ready to stand up to his father, no matter the cost. Eric marched downstairs to his father's study, where the older man sat with a glass of whiskey in hand, still seething from his election loss. The door burst open, and his father looked up, startled by the sudden entrance. Eric stood in the doorway, holding the gun firmly in his hand, his face darkened with anger. Without a word, Eric raised the gun and pointed it straight at his father. The shock on his father's face was immediate. He had never seen Eric like this. His son, who had always been so obedient, so respectful, was now standing in front of him, threatening him with a gun. Eric's voice was cold and steady, a tone his father had never heard from him before. "If Destiny's father dies," Eric said slowly, "then you will die too." His words cut through the air like a knife. For a moment his father sat frozen, unable to speak. The weight of his son's words hit him hard. This wasn't a joke. Eric wasn't bluffing. There was a deadly seriousness in his eyes, a rage that his father had never imagined could exist in him. Eric's father finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Eric, put the gun down. You don't want to do this." But Eric didn't move. His grip on the gun stayed firm, and his eyes stayed locked on his father. "You've done enough," Eric continued. "Because of you, an innocent man is lying in the hospital, fighting for his life. All because of your greed, your need for control. If he doesn't make it, I swear, you'll pay for it with your own life." His father felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had always pushed Eric to follow his rules, his plans, his vision for the family's future. He had never cared about Eric's feelings, about what he wanted for his own life. And now, looking at the anger and pain on his son's face, he realized that he had pushed too far. He had broken something inside Eric. Tears welled up in his father's eyes, something Eric had never seen before. The old man lowered his head, ashamed. "Eric, I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I just wanted you to have the life I thought was best for you." But Eric wasn't moved. You've never cared about what's best for me. You've only ever cared about what's best for yourself. Well, I'm done. If Roland dies, you'll see just how far I'm willing to go." Eric's father nodded slowly, realizing the depth of his son's pain and the seriousness of the situation. He couldn't lose his only son. Not like this. For the first time in his life, Eric's father felt true fear, not just of the gun, but of losing his son for good. He looked at Eric, the boy he had raised, now standing before him like a stranger. The realization hit him that he had pushed too hard, too long, and had taken everything for granted. His greed, his hunger for power, had led to this moment, and he had no one to blame but himself. Slowly he raised his hands, showing Eric that he meant no harm. "Eric," he said, his voice softer now, "put the gun down. I will fix this, I promise. I won't let anything happen to Roland." Eric's face remained hard, but he could see the change in his father's expression. The guilt was there, but the damage had already been done. He lowered the gun slightly, but his voice stayed cold. "Fixing this won't bring back the trust you've broken," Eric said. "You can't undo what you've done." His father nodded, understanding that words wouldn't make up for everything. "I know," he whispered, "but I'll try. I'll call off my men and I'll make sure Roland gets the best care. I'll make things right." Eric stood there, still breathing heavily, the gun now lowered completely. He didn't know if he could trust his father's promises, but he didn't want more violence. Slowly, he placed the gun down on the table between them. His father let out a breath of relief, but didn't dare move. "I'll hold you to your word," Eric said firmly. "If anything happens to Destiny's father, I'll never forgive you, and I will never come back." His father nodded again, more tears forming in his eyes. "I understand, son. I won't let you down this time. I promise." Eric turned and walked out of the room, leaving his father sitting there in silence, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. For the first time, the weight of his actions truly hit him. He had nearly lost his only son, and worse, he had caused harm to a family that had done nothing but show kindness to Eric. As Eric walked out of the house and into the night, he felt a storm of emotions. He wanted to believe his father, but years of disappointment made it hard. The only thing he knew for sure was that he had to protect Destiny and her father. They were the only people who had ever treated him like a real person, not like a trophy or a symbol of wealth. He made his way back to the hospital to check on Roland. When he arrived, he found Destiny still by her father's side, holding his hand, tears in her eyes. She looked up when she saw Eric and gave him a sad smile. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft and tired. Eric nodded, though his heart was still heavy. "I made sure my father won't hurt your family again," he said. "I promise, you're safe now." Destiny looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She didn't say anything, just squeezed her father's hand a little tighter. Eric sat down next to her, taking her other hand in his. For a moment, they sat in silence, just two people trying to find some peace in the chaos. The love between them was real, but the challenges they faced were greater than either of them had imagined. Yet in that moment, they knew they had each other, and somehow that gave them strength. The next day, Eric's father arrived at the hospital, carrying the weight of regret on his shoulders. He had spent the night thinking about everything, how his greed had nearly destroyed the only family that had shown his son real love. When he walked into Roland's room, the air felt heavy with tension. Destiny sat by her father's bedside, and Eric stood near the window, his back turned. Roland, though still weak, managed a small smile when he saw Eric's father. He had heard the story from Destiny and knew the old man was partly to blame for his condition. But Roland, always a humble and forgiving man, believed in giving people second chances. Eric's father hesitated for a moment, then walked over to Roland's bed. He looked at the man who had been hurt because of him and felt shame burn deep within him. He cleared his throat, then spoke quietly. "I am sorry, Roland," he said, his voice low. "I've made terrible mistakes. I let my ambition blind me, and I hurt you and your family. I'm not proud of what I've done, but I want to make things right." Roland, still too weak to speak much, simply nodded. Destiny watched her father closely, waiting for his reaction. She had never seen him angry, but this was the first time she wondered if her father could forgive someone who had caused so much harm. After a long pause, Roland finally spoke. "Life is short," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "There's no room for grudges. What matters now is making sure my daughter is happy, and that your son is happy too." Eric's father, relieved, nodded. He had never met someone as kind as Roland, and he promised himself that he would do whatever it took to help this family from now on. Back in the village, things were changing for Sonia. For months, she had been proud and boastful, always flaunting her beauty and hoping to marry rich. But after her fallout with Destiny and Judah, she felt increasingly isolated. Her plan to help Judah win Destiny's heart had failed, and in the process, she had alienated herself from everyone. That was when a man appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. He came to the village with expensive clothes and a shiny car, claiming to be a wealthy businessman looking for a wife. Sonia, eager to show everyone that she could still win, fell for his charms quickly. He spoke of a big house in the city, cars, and a luxurious life. Sonia was blinded by her desire for wealth, and before long they were engaged. The man promised to take her to the city after the wedding, and Sonia was convinced her dream had finally come true. But there was a dark secret behind this man's sudden appearance. He wasn't a wealthy businessman at all. In fact, he was a poor roadside mechanic. He had heard about Sonia through Judah, who had grown bitter and angry after being rejected by Destiny. Judah had paid this man to trick Sonia as a form of revenge for all the money she had taken from him, always promising to help him win Destiny, but never delivering. Sonia, 6 months pregnant by the time the man came to her village, had no idea about his true identity. She was excited about the future, ready to leave the village and live the life she had always dreamed of. When they finally moved to the city after the wedding, the truth hit her like a storm. Instead of a mansion, they arrived at a small, run-down shack near a noisy mechanic's garage. There were no cars, no wealth, and no luxury. Just grease, noise, and hard work. The man, now revealed as a poor mechanic, had no money, no business, and no plans to take care of Sonia the way she had imagined. He had used Judah's money to lure her in, and now she was trapped. Sonia cried for days, realizing that she had been tricked. But what made it worse was that she was already 6 months pregnant with the mechanic's child. There was no escaping her fate now. She had spent so much time looking down on others, only to end up in a worse situation than she had ever imagined. She hated herself for her greed, for allowing herself to be fooled, and for turning her back on the people who had once been her friends. Now, she was stuck in a small, miserable home with a man she didn't love, carrying his child, and with no way out. The city life she had dreamed of was nothing but a nightmare, and she had no one to blame but herself. As the months passed, Sophia's bitterness grew. She regretted everything, the way she had treated Destiny, the choices she had made for money, and most of all, falling for a lie. But now it was too late. She was 6 months pregnant, tied to a man she didn't love, and living a life far from the dreams she had once boasted about. A month after Eric and Destiny's wedding, their lives seemed to blossom with happiness. 3 months later, Destiny discovered she was pregnant. The news filled Eric with excitement. He could hardly believe he was going to be a father. He hugged Destiny tightly, his heart overflowing with joy. He had everything he had ever wanted, a loving wife and now a baby on the way. When Eric's mother heard the news, she was equally thrilled. Despite the rocky start between her and Destiny, she was now genuinely happy for her son. She couldn't wait to meet her grandchild. She sent gifts and called Destiny often, making sure she had everything she needed. One day, Eric was overwhelmed with work and meetings. Destiny didn't want to disturb him, so she decided to drive herself to her antenatal appointment. Confident that she could handle it, she kissed Eric goodbye and left the house with a smile. As Destiny drove down the road, her car suddenly started making strange noises and came to a complete stop. She tried to restart the engine, but it wouldn't move. Staying calm, she got out of the car and scanned her surroundings. Across the road, she spotted a small mechanic shop, so she decided to walk over and get some help. As she crossed the road, she noticed a woman sitting by the roadside, eating a loaf of bread. The woman's clothes were ragged and her hair was messy. Destiny took a closer look and couldn't believe her eyes. It was Sophia, her former friend. Sophia looked up and immediately recognized Destiny. Her eyes widened in shock as she took in Destiny's appearance, her beautiful dress, her glowing skin, and the clear signs of happiness in her life. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She never imagined seeing Destiny again, especially not in such a transformed state. Sophia began crying, her voice shaking as she explained everything to Destiny. She had lost everything. After the betrayal by Judah, her life spiraled out of control. She ended up with a man who lied about his wealth, and when she realized the truth, she was already pregnant. He left her, and with no one to turn to, Sophia had been living on the streets, struggling to survive. Destiny listened quietly, feeling a mixture of pity and sadness for Sophia. Despite everything that had happened between them, she couldn't ignore the pain in Sophia's voice. Before she left, Destiny pulled out her checkbook, wrote a generous amount, and handed it to Sophia. "Use this to start a business, Sophia," Destiny said softly. "I hope it helps you get back on your feet." Sophia was overwhelmed with gratitude. She couldn't believe Destiny, the same woman she had once mocked, was now helping her in her time of need. With tears in her eyes, she thanked Destiny over and over. Destiny smiled gently and walked back to her car. After getting help from the mechanic, she drove off, feeling a sense of peace for helping Sophia. Later that evening, when Eric got home, Destiny told him everything that had happened. Eric listened and then said, "It's good you helped her. It's never right to look down on others. Life can change in unexpected ways." Destiny nodded, knowing that her kindness had made a difference, not just for Sophia, but for herself as well. In the end, the story teaches us that true love and kindness come from the heart, not from wealth or status. Money cannot buy genuine love, and it is important to value people for who they are, not for what they have. Eric discovered that his real happiness came from embracing love and compassion rather than hiding behind his wealth. Destiny's kindness and willingness to help others showed that caring for people is what truly matters in life. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.